Hello, I'm Tricia Murray from the Birth and Baby Academy. Many of you might know me already. I hope certainly by now that you do. This is day 4 of the mini-series around pain and childbirth. So today the focus is all about different pain relief options. But I just want to recap what we've covered so far. So day 1 was the fact that pain isn't necessarily a negative thing, that pain can be a positive thing in birth because it's telling us the baby's coming. And then we covered in day 2 what makes pain worse. So we covered environment, stress, mindset, loads more in that sort of session, like our physical needs. Then day 3 we covered how we can help ourselves, and it's kind of the opposite of day 2. So really focusing in on oxytocin, environment, mindset, looking after ourselves, looking after all of our needs. So that was day 3. So today is all about different pain relief options. Now, as I said all the way through, this mini-series is a little bit of what we cover in the birth bundle. It's just a tiny snippet of what's in the birth bundle. But I really want to do it because I want you to be able to use this for your own birth preparation. So I've got my list here because there's so many different pain relief options, and I wanted to make sure I didn't forget anything. So we'll start with some of the really simple ones and we'll work our way up. Now, the reason why I think this is really important is often there's like a big judgment around pain relief, and specifically epidurals. And I've worked with clients, I've been their doula, and they've needed to have an epidural, and they have needed that epidural, and I have breathed a sigh of relief that they've taken that epidural. And they sort of come next day, it's like, they're like okaying it with me, like, was that okay that I did that? And of course it was okay that they did that. Absolutely, I don't have a judgment. Sometimes it's a really good, I think it's a good thing that they've taken the epidural. So not that I would advise them, but just in terms of it's not a bad thing. Because there's a difference, in my opinion, between pain and suffering. So we know that not all women, but many women experience pain in labour. But pain in labour isn't necessarily a bad thing. So pain is telling us that we need to prepare for our baby. But there's a difference between that and a woman who's suffering with the pain, who's really not managing it. And it's so vital that you keep your dignity in birth. Okay, I really, really believe strongly in choices, women's choices, but specifically I really believe in dignity in birth. And sometimes that dignity comes from pain relief. So the last 2 days we've been focusing a lot around oxytocin, environment, who's supporting you, your physical needs, just about really being looked after. Okay, so just remember some of that when we're doing this. So the first thing I'm going to suggest in terms of pain relief, and many of you are going to like this, is a glass of wine. Now, you might be appalled because obviously who drinks in pregnancy? Well, this is labour, okay, pregnancy has happened. And also, what's the difference between a glass of wine and morphine or some other analgesic? Okay, so I don't think it's always a bad thing to have a glass of wine. And the other thing I think about a glass of wine is it's a relaxant. It helps you to produce naturally oxytocin, because if you can imagine you and your partner sitting having a meal and that lovely, loved up, warm, fuzzy feeling, that's what you're trying to replicate. And sometimes a glass of wine will help you to do that. Okay, so I do think it's a good thing. Now, some women are really sick in early labour, so not for them. But if you feel that you can stomach it, have a think about it. The second pain relief option might be like a TENS machine. So what the TENS machine does is it puts little electrical stimulation into various parts of your back at the bottom, and by doing that it starts to change how your brain's working in terms of managing the pain relief. So it can be really helpful. You'd start it in early labour if you're going to do it. There's no point in doing it when the contractions are unmanageable. Do them in early labour and build it up. So start off at a very, very, very low level and then just build it up, ramp it up as the contractions ramp up. Another option, so you can't use this at the same time because you can't take the TENS machine into the water, but another option is water. So obviously you've got your showers and you've got your baths, and you've also got things like hot water bottles. That's quite helpful. Of course, you've got birth pills, which can provide enormous pain relief, but that's something that you would use much further on in your labour. So generally they want you to be in active labour, so many centimetres dilated, before you go into the birth pool. But certainly it's something to certainly consider. Analgesics, something else that's used. But I just want to give you a bit of a word of warning. So often you phone up triage and you tell them that you're in early labour. And they'll say to you, take 2 paracetamol and see how you get on. Well, the paracetamol, what increasingly we're finding out is that paracetamol actually stops your body from producing prostaglandins. And that is what we need to help our cervix to ripen. So women who are taking paracetamol end up having much longer labours. Okay, so don't take paracetamol in early labour. Sometimes when you get to the birth centre or the maternity unit, they will offer you codeine. And that's something that I've seen work reasonably successfully in terms of just taking the edge off, and enough that sometimes mum can have like a mini nap between contractions. So it can be something that's helpful. Then of course we've got gas and air, which most of us understand. So it's like a tube that you put in your mouth and you breathe deeply and you take in the gas and air. Some women really love it, some women not so much. So either it can be great to take the edge off the contractions, other women feel really sleepy, woozy, very dizzy and quite sick on it. So we don't know where you'll be on that, but certainly worth exploring. And then of course the next skin level up from that is opioids. So in Edinburgh we use pethidine. I think in other parts of the UK they use it's like a different name, but basically it's like a morphine type medicine normally given to you by injection. And again, many women can find that really helpful, other women not so. So it just depends. It can have an effect on baby post-birth in terms of breathing. They can come out with slightly lower AGPAR scores. It can just be one of those things. But if you need that pain relief, then you need that pain relief, okay? So it's about weighing it all up. If that's the thing that's going to get you through, then you need to weigh that risk up. So I'm not saying that you need to do it, but I'm just getting you to put the balance of risks together. And then finally, we have epidurals. Now, there's so much judgment about epidurals. You know, epidurals are for people who are taking the easy way out, or I don't know, it's like just seemed to be a really, really bad thing. But there's times that I think epidurals are really useful, and I've listed some of the times that I felt they've been really, really useful working with women, and just in terms of my experiences working with women post-birth, birth coaching, getting them ready for birth. There's been times I think it's been really, 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 really helpful. Okay, so if you've been in labour for a few days and you're absolutely exhausted, and specifically that might be a first-time mum, so sometimes you might have a slightly longer labour, and you're absolutely exhausted, an epidural can be really helpful. And sometimes when you get that epidural, what will actually happen is that your cervix will start to dilate itself and you'll give birth really well because you've had the chance to sleep. And when you've slept, sometimes that can just help you to relax, and then that helps you to give birth, okay? So sometimes that can happen. If your baby's in a challenging position and you're experiencing excruciating pain because of the position, or because they're in that position, sometimes they might want to do some manual manoeuvring with the baby. So sometimes they want to be able to tip the baby's head down or just twist it round ever so slightly. It might be really helpful to have an epidural. So if baby's in a really, really awkward position, epidural might be really helpful. If you're getting really overwhelmed by the pain, it can be helpful. So sometimes what can happen with some women is they can go from, they phone up triage, they're in at triage, and then they get sent home, and then they go off, do whatever they're off to do. They then go back in, they then wait in triage, waiting to get assessed or getting monitored, bright lights, people talking at them. They might go to the birth centre, they might go up to labour ward, they might go from the birth centre up to the labour ward. Just remembering all the things that we've spoken about how important like not feeling stressed is, not feeling anxious is, how important that we're in the right environment, and when we're not in the right environment, our stress levels go up. All the things that we've spoken about in terms of day 2 and day 3, this is often, I think, what happens, and this is one of the struggles I think many women have, is they'll turn up at the triage and then they get really overwhelmed by everything that's going on. So this third example about why you might do an epidural is I think very, 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 very common. If you have a doula supporting you, it can make it better, because they can help you to get back in the zone. Very hard for a partner to do that because they're struggling themselves. Okay, they're struggling themselves, but they don't know what's happening either. It's like a totally new system to them too. So as easy as it is for us to say that they should be able to do that, it's not. But sometimes an experienced birth partner or a really good midwife can help you to get back into the zone. But if you don't have them, you might get overwhelmed by the pain. And then the final reason might be because you are on the hormone drip. So some women get induced, and they are induced with like a pessary and maybe like a gel, and then sometimes some women need to have the hormone drip, and that is artificial oxytocin. Now the thing to do with the artificial oxytocin is it blocks the natural oxytocin. So the natural oxytocin is what you want to release, because when that's released, then that releases all the endorphins. So if you don't have the natural oxytocin released, then you don't have the endorphins released, and what that means is that the pain can be really excruciating. Now, I have seen some amazing women manage through it, and absolutely, you know, total hats off to them, total respects, they've done really, really, really well to manage it. But it's not a failure in that situation, I think, to take the epidural as well. Okay, so I'm not telling you to do it, I'm just saying that is one of the times that you might want to consider it. Okay, that's not an exhaustive list, but these are the times that I have thought it's been really helpful. Okay, so it's not exhaustive, it's just times I think it is helpful. But what we need to remember is that with epidurals, and I'm not going to go into this in massive detail, I'm just going to touch on this, that there are sometimes risks associated. So, although the recent study came out and said this was wrong, until that study, we know that the epidurals can increase risk of tearing. Women are lying on their back. Often they feel really disassociated from their babies coming out, so they can struggle with bonding with their babies. Might affect breastfeeding. Certainly might be one of the risk factors for postnatal depression and bonding with our baby. Certainly in other studies and animal studies, animals that are given epidurals will often reject their babies. So I'm just putting that out there, so that you know there are issues with it. And the other thing is, it doesn't always work. So we think it works in about 60 to 70% of women. We don't know what the actual number is. So it's something to try, but it doesn't always work. And of course, you've got to wait for the anaesthetist to come, and that can be really stressful. So again, like, that's a really stressful thing that you're waiting. So all the things that you know you would normally try to help, it doesn't always help. So I'm not saying that to deter you from having an epidural, I'm just getting you just to think about it all. So I think it's a really good thing to have in your toolkit if you get to the point that you're in that suffering stage, not in the handling the pain stage, but in the suffering stage. So, and of course, not many women won't get to that. Certainly, I feel if you've watched day 2 and day 3, your chances are really good able to manage it naturally. But there's always times that we can't forecast, we can't tell what's going to happen. I've had some really good strategies with clients that we have agreed beforehand that if they've asked for an epidural, I had one great client and she said, well, could you, if I ask for it, I want you to work through the next 3 contractions with me, and basically then we'll make a decision after those 3 contractions, and it might be that we go for another 3 contractions and then make a decision, and then another 3 contractions and make a decision, but we'll work on those sort of 10-minute blocks and see how we get on. And of course, go back to all the things we did yesterday. A woman who is exhausted, you know, we talk about active labour, so we have this expectation you to be up on your feet and rocking and swaying and moving and doing X, Y and Z, but sometimes that is exhausting. And actually sometimes what you really need is to rest through those contractions. So maybe rest, have something good to eat, something good to drink, go to the toilet. Sometimes that can just be enough to like refocus you and get you re-energised and back in the zone. And of course, a change of position, massage, all these things might really help you. Just want to just remind you from yesterday. So that's the end of this mini-series. That's the end of the session just now. If you found it useful, you might really enjoy doing the birth bundle. I'll put details here. If you've not downloaded yet the free resources download, the free resources bundle, then I would download that now because it's totally free, totally up to you to decide how you want to use it. And I certainly welcome you asking me any questions, sending me any comments. I'm going to put a survey out and see what other things you'd like me to cover. So, and I think I'm going to do these once a month. So